Adam, welcome. I just would like everyone to know that I am wearing JustFab shoes. See? They're amazing. They cost me $80 and they're super comfortable. So I want to know, Adam, are you wearing JustFab shoes?
I'm not wearing JustFab shoes.
Okay. When does the men's line come out?
We're launching a men's line for Fabletics, which is our athletic wear line, in June. And then our men's fashion line will hit in 2017.
Okay, so June already for Fabletics. That's pretty great. How many here are pretty familiar with JustFab and have shopped there? Okay. Women, yeah, of course. Well, there would be women. Maybe you could share a little bit about JustFab and your different lines.
Sure. So at JustFab, we're giving women and soon men access to the fashion they want at a value they love. So we've created 4 brands. We have JustFab, Shoe Dazzle, Fab Kids, and Fabletics. We do about, this year, our run rate right now is a little over $500 million in revenue. We're in 10 countries across the globe, about 2,000 employees. And we're building and creating fashion brands through e-commerce. So we think the next big fashion brands of this decade and the next are going to be created online instead of through retail. And that's what we're doing with JustFab.
Well, I want to talk about your revenue and how you generate that revenue, but I want to back up a little bit because if you look at your agenda, this segment is called What's It Like to Be a Unicorn? So in August, I believe fall of last year, JustFab raised $85 million and now has a $1 billion or over $1 billion market valuation. So there's about 38 companies. I know many people are starting to hear of these unicorns, but the question is, what's it like to be a unicorn? So, 1 billion is different from it was 10 years ago. You've been in this business for a long time, but it's still a pretty big number. So how does that feel?
Well, we never really think of ourselves as a unicorn. So it's not like we're in our office and we're high-fiving saying, it's great to be a unicorn.
Do you have rainbows, like wallpaper?
Well, we don't have rainbows, but the office is predominantly pink. So look, we have a lot of employees who have dedicated the last 5 years, every moment of their life, to building great brands and making our customers happy. So it's wonderful to have that external validation that we're building a big and valuable company. But really, it doesn't change how we operate. Doesn't change how we operate on a day-to-day basis. Ironically enough, this round of financing had actually a much smaller impact to how we operate than some of the prior rounds of financing.
Well, yeah, that's true, because the early stages are always a lot more difficult, right? You're trying to figure out your model, but we'll get into that. I want to continue with this whole valuation thing, because this morning you sent me an article about some unicorns being overvalued. And so I want to ask you, this year 16 companies reached the $1 billion valuation threshold, so there's going to be about 100 companies now that have this $1 billion threshold. So do you think that we're getting a little out of hand here with valuations?
Well, I think that's a tough question, and you need a little bit of a crystal ball. But my gut is that if you could invest in those 100 unicorns as an asset class, it would actually outperform the broader market over the next 10 years. So valuations across the board in the public stock market as well as the private stock market are high. So I do think some unicorns may be overvalued, but the rest of the article is, some unicorns may be overvalued, but the big dinosaurs are going to die. So on a relative basis, if you think about a unicorn being valued at $1 billion or a public security being valued at 15 to 20 times earnings, I'd bet more in the unicorn, because to say, hey, this S&P legacy company is going to generate the same cash returns for the next 15 or 20 years is probably a riskier bet, right? Because they're getting disrupted by unicorns. Or maybe not unicorns, but by great startup companies raising a lot of capital.
I'm picturing a unicorn army. So you brought up the dinosaurs. So who are the dinosaurs in your industry?
So in our industry, it's all of the specialty retailers. So think about the Abercrombie and H&M and Forever 21 and Zara's and Gap's. And what's happening in fashion, right? Fashion in the apparel and accessories in North America is about $360 billion a year in sales. And today, about $50 billion happens online. But every single year, there's
50 billion
50 billion is happening online. So there's actually...
And what was that 10 years ago? It was practically nothing, right?
Well,
Or
10 years ago was practically nothing.
Yeah.
3 years ago it was about 20 billion, 4 years ago. So if you look at the entire apparel and accessory industry, it's not growing. It was 360 billion last year. It'll be 360 billion this year. But where customers are shopping is changing to where every year 10 to 11 billion dollars is shifting online. So 5 years from now, that 50 billion is going to be 100 or 110 billion. And I'd argue most of the guys making their sales in retail today aren't ready for that big of a market shift to occur.
Do you think that you have an online business? You mentioned that you're already generating $500 million, or you expect to. That's your revenue run rate for this year. But do you plan on also having sort of an offline site? You already have one retail store, so do you think you also have to have that component?
I don't think you have to have that component. We did open up our test store about 1.5 years ago, and we've been really pleased with the results. So we are going to open up more stores in the future. And people always ask, wait a second, isn't that confusing? You're here telling me that retail is shifting to online. Why are you opening up retail stores? But my view of the world is that in the next 20 years, maybe half of the sales in apparel and accessories will be online. So of that 360 billion figure, 150, 160 million is happening, maybe 175 million is happening online. We still want to get part of that other remaining 175 billion pool. So we think we have great brands, so we want both the retail and the e-commerce sales.
Well, let's talk about your brands and some of the stuff that you're, the merchandise you're selling. So you started off with shoes. You purchased Shoe Dazzle as well. Today, what percentage does this the shoe category make up of your revenues? Is this sort of still the lion's share? Is it a cash cow?
So how we look at our business is 2 segments. We have our fast fashion segment and then our athletic wear segment. So in fast fashion, we have 3 brands, JustFab, Shoe Dazzle, and Fab Kids. So the mix between the 2 segments is about 70-30. So about 70% of our sales in fast fashion and about 30% in athletic wear. Of the fast fashion segment, about 65% is still shoes.
Oh, wow. And, so you don't sell shoes or sneakers for the Fabletics? That's not something?
Currently, yep.
Okay. Oh, but you planned on doing that?
We're not planning on it either at this point.
Okay.
Yep.
So athletic. So then that would mean that basically Fabletics accounts for 30% of all of your. Okay. Whereas like 18 months ago was nothing. It was.
Yeah, we launched Fabletics 18 months ago.
Wow. So do you see, at the end of 2016, is this athletic category going to be the driver of your business? Is that where the growth is?
No, both segments are actually growing in absolute dollars at a very similar rate at this point.
Okay.
Yep.
So where would that be in 2016? Where's the revenue going to be?
I think it will still be the sort of 70-30,
Okay.
70-30 mix.
Let's talk about the VIP membership, because that's really the nuance with JustFab, is that it's a subscription e-commerce model, but it has a VIP membership. So you can go on JustFab and shop, but you can also be a VIP member, which I am one. And what percentage of the sales come from the VIP members?
Yeah, so we're over 95% of our sales are from VIP customers.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
Yep, a much smaller segment is buying at retail.
And you're now at 3.5 million, right? Because you were at 3, and that's new. That's new because you were at 3 million. I mean, last I saw published publicly, it was 3 million, so 3.5 million. And the model, it hasn't changed since, 5 years, because you're 5 years old, right? So the model is you pay $39.95 a month, or you buy something, or you skip out. But it has to be within 1 to 5 days. And that's always been the model since the beginning, right? So talk a little bit about how you came up with that model, because I think a lot of people here understand the Amazon Prime model. You pay $75 a year. Costco, you pay $50 or something along those lines. So how did you come up? Why didn't you come up with just an annual fee, and why a $39.95 monthly fee?
Yeah, so it goes back actually to our prior company. So we created a company called dermstore.com, which competes against Sephora and Ulta online, the second largest skincare online store. And we sold that company to Target about 3 years ago. And my biggest frustration with Dermstore is over 30% of our marketing budget every year would go to reacquiring customers that we had already got once before, right? So you're spending tens of millions of dollars to reacquire customers that you already bought once before. So when we created JustFab, we wanted to have a model where once we acquired customers, there was a high degree of loyalty and engagement, and that those customers would come back to us without having to reacquire customers again. Mm-hmm. So if you look at Amazon Prime, if you look at Costco, the real beauty of their models is not the revenue they generate from the subscription, but the fact that once you're an Amazon Prime customer, you're something like 6 or 8
Is that to wake us up?
We're awake. So once you become an Amazon Prime customer, you're 6 to 8 times more likely to shop at Amazon. So we wanted to create a membership program that had that same type of loyalty and engagement, right. But we didn't want to make that membership program necessarily cost money. Mm-hmm. So the beauty of our monthly program is that we get customers to come back to us every single month, but they don't have to purchase. So there's a perception that our customers are buying shoes every single month, but in actuality, the average customer shops 3 to 4 times per year. But the secret sauce is that they're coming back to us 30 times a year. So our traditional retail customer visits us maybe 3 to 4 times. A VIP customer visits us almost 30 times.
Right, that's good. But the VIP goes back because they have to opt out, right? I mean, because they have, sometimes, if they decide, because you just mentioned they don't shop every month, so they shop 3 to 4 times a year, you said, so then they're opting out 8 times. Sometimes they forget. And because it's not all, it's very hard to remember to go in and opt out. So what percentage of the revenue comes from the $39.95 people, members are paying because they forgot to opt out?
So, we don't break out the individual revenue, but that's a very, very small percentage of the total revenue. So we send customers a reminder on the 1st, 3rd, and 5th to come check their boutiques. Mm-hmm. And a customer has to come once per month, and they're actually coming 2.5 to 3 times. And if you're a new customer, on the 6th, when we would bill you, we actually send you another reminder and say, hey, as a new customer, we're going to give you an extra week. Here's again a reminder to come back. So it is possible that people don't see their email, or they intend to check it and they forget, but it's the exception, not the norm.
Got it. Okay. Well, let's talk. This is Vator Splash. It's a lot about education and a lot about lessons learned. So JustFab, as everybody here knows and has probably followed, there's been a lot of commerce companies out there. They have flash sales have been big in the last 5 years. And one of the challenges for a startup is to not follow every sort of shiny ball, right? And to keep to your knitting. And one thing JustFab didn't do was follow sort of this flash sales trend, which was very popular, and VCs were throwing money at it. So what did you think about flash sales? Were you tempted to, a lot of the guys in the commerce space were actually getting a lot of funding, and did you even consider it, or did you say that that's just, we can't go there?
For us, we never considered it. So, and again, learning from our last...
Just a little?
No, so again, going back to Derm Store. So Derm Store predominantly sold other people's brands. And it was tough because we're competing against Sephora. In some ways, we might be competing against Amazon. So we knew that we wanted to build our own proprietary brands. Mm-hmm. So we sort of never thought about changing our business model or I guess, chasing after the shiny ball.
Right. I want to make this interactive, so I'm going to ask a question here because somebody's clearly asked it. Well, one thing for sure, you don't chase the next latest shiny ball to become a unicorn. I know that. So, what were some other few key decisions you made early on that were critical to becoming the successful company you are today?
One which it's funny because my wife and I, we took what's called a Harrison assessment, which is sort of like a Myers-Briggs, but more interesting and I think more relevant. And she's like a 1 on optimism and risk-taking, and I'm like a 9 on optimism and risk-taking. So she thought it was insane, and we had some discussions about it. But the biggest thing we did is we put a lot of our own money into this business. So we were fortunate enough to have made some profits from other companies. And we had some other companies in our portfolio that were generating significant cash flow. So we actually put the first $33 million into JustFab. And that allowed us to own enough of the company that it made sense to raise a very large amount of money to build this company. So I think that's one very key decision.
To keep ownership control and also bootstrap in the beginning, because prior to JustFab, you actually bootstrapped the initial company that actually gave where JustFab emerged, right?
Yeah. So yeah, prior to that, it was 12 people working out of my house. We completely self-funded it. We took almost 100% of what we made from the intermix transaction and rolled it forward into our next venture. So I think really going all in and believing what you're doing and putting your own money into it was important. I think whether that's $50,000 or whether it's millions of dollars depends on your situation, but having your own cash and skin in the game was important. And the other one was not pivoting. So I think you hear a lot of talk about, all these great pivots. I generally believe that pivots typically don't work. There are exceptions, but at one point before we acquired ShoeDazzle dropped their whole VIP membership model. And our board was saying, oh my gosh, should we do the same? And we said, well, wait, why would we do that? Like, customers are really happy. We're getting a great return on our advertising. Let's not do something just because somebody else is doing it. So we really try to stay true to our original vision.
Sure. But if you were in flash sales, you might have pivoted, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with pivoting if something's not working out.
Well, I think the whole flash sales things are a little misunderstood. I actually think a lot of the flash sale companies are great companies. They just may not be as large of companies as some of the early investors or management teams envisioned. So,
well, let's talk about some of those companies and some of just commerce companies in general. We have 5 minutes, and by the way, if you're not comfortable asking the question here, I think we have. Oh, we don't. Okay, you'll have to. You can raise your hand. I will look out and see if you want to stand up and introduce yourself to Adam. But there were, again, going back is over the last 3 years, there's just been so many commerce companies that got a lot of press, and then they didn't, and actually they're struggling. So for example, Fab, which raised, I don't even know, almost $1 billion, $700 million, and then sold for $15 million. So, and there's a lot of Zulily went public, and now it's trading at 1x sales, still doing well, but so what happened? What's happening in the commerce space, and what can you learn from some of these companies, particularly a company like Fab?
Well, I think Fab's an outlier, to be honest. I think it's a great example of all the things that you can do wrong, but I don't think there was a problem with the flash sale business model. I think in Fab's case, there was a misalignment, there was a executional mistake, there was raising too much money too soon. And I think what happened was they raised so much capital, they felt they had to go build a $3-4 billion company. And the size of their opportunity was probably more like $300 or $400 million. So there's one thing that's important, right? There's nothing wrong with building a $300 million company. That's phenomenal. And if you look at it, right, there's Guild, there's Zulily, there's VIP Shop in China. Like, there's lots of great flash sale companies of varying sizes. The key is that you have to raise the right amount of capital at the right valuation to sort of align management and your investors.
So, I mean, you talk about that their opportunity was a lot smaller than what they were going for, but with a venture-backed business, you are going for a much broader market opportunity. Are you saying that what they should have done was done better, execute better in their smaller market opportunity before they started raising more money? They were just raising too much money too quickly before even perfecting their strategy in a smaller market.
Yeah, I don't think Fab's a great case study because I just think they never had good fundamental unit economics. So they're paying way too much money for customer acquisition and waiting way too long for return on those customers. But I think in the case of Fab, they just raised so much money compared to the size of their business. They felt the need to pivot, to change, to try to grow faster than their business could naturally grow.
What would you tell an entrepreneur here who could potentially be raising around? What do they need to have in place to know, to make sure that they are not over-raising?
Well, I think it all depends on the round, right? So in the seed round, you just want to raise money, and so you can go chase down your dream and build your company. And truthfully, the same is pretty much true for the Series A. The Series A will be by far the hardest round of financing that you ever raise.
How many people are raising a Series A here?
Well, I think that's good. No one's raising their hands.
Okay, they've all raised it, okay?
So I think the biggest thing you got to prove out that it's pretty basic, but customers love your product you have a high net promoter score, you have a high natural referral and organic growth rate. If it's an e-commerce business, that you have great customer acquisition metrics so that you can acquire customers through multiple channels. And I like to see companies get a return on their advertising within 6 months and make at least a 3x return after 3 years. So I'm also a venture partner at Crosscut, where I oversee all the e-commerce investments, and that's really what we're looking for. And I think if you look at the track record, if you're at those sort of media dollars at scale, you can have a 15 to 20% EBITDA business pretty quickly.
That's good. So one of the things that you do too, one of your models is, and for a lot of the commerce companies that probably you look at Crosscut, they probably are trying to, or maybe they figured it out, but they're selling third-party brands, or they're potentially building a brand, which is super hard. But from the very beginning, you said, I want to build a brand, I want to hold inventory. Talk a little bit about your philosophy behind why you were so adamant about building your own brands.
I think there's a couple pieces. One is brands are really valuable. I think it's fun to actually build a brand and see customers interacting with the product and loving it. And it's also where I think the opportunity lies in e-commerce. So if you look at sort of e-commerce, I don't know if it's on 1.0 or 2.0 now, but if you look at the first e-commerce companies where you think about Zappos and Amazon, it was really about having a huge variety of product, a really good online shopping experience, fast fulfillment, and great customer service. Now, you fast forward 10 years later, that's the barrier to entry. Like, if you don't have that, you're not even going to be in business as e-commerce. So
that's free shipping and 24/7 customer service. You need to have that.
Yeah, those are sort of the norm now, as well as a great shopping experience, right? So I think to compete with guys like Amazon that have huge war chests and great fulfillment, you really need to have your own proprietary product. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck playing in a low-margin business, and which could be great, right? If you're Amazon, you're going to do $30 billion in sales eventually. It's okay to have low margins, but for us, we like to have 50 to 65% product margins.
Okay, 2 questions. We're out of time, but just 2 really quickly, because it's really hard to build a brand and get it out there. So what are some of the lessons what was the thing for those out there who are trying to build a brand to get it out there? Is there 1 or 2 things that you did to be successful in getting a brand out there? You've done that multiple times already.
Well, I love one of the questions here, which is, do we see ourselves as a tech company or another kind of company? So,
okay, I'm selecting the questions here.
Oh, sorry.
But, no, I'm kidding.
It ties to that.
That's okay. You can do that. Go ahead.
Yes, I think that's actually one of the reasons we've been successful at building a brand, is because we actually never looked at ourselves as a technology company. Our third cultural cornerstone is we're building fashion brands, not an e-commerce company. Now, certainly we're selling through e-commerce, but I've never met one of our customers who said, oh, I love your shopping cart. That email subject line you sent me, that was amazing, right? What they remember and what they care about is the product that comes in the box, and you got to surprise and delight them with that. So we've really made sure that we're focused not only on our technology platform and our marketing, but on the actual product. Yeah.
So I don't know if you noticed, Adam has amazing skin. So, I mean, he's like a skin mogul too. No, he's a fashion and skincare mogul, but I just want to know, is that something you aspired to when you were younger?
Truthfully, absolutely not. Before JustFab, I knew very little about fashion. Now I know maybe that much. But I have a co-CEO who we've worked together for 12 years. So he's definitely the fashion DNA and works in the brand. And I'm the he likes to call me the tech nerd who figures out the e-commerce and marketing and operations.
And I'm nervous about saying this because I have my son is actually here volunteering. And I don't want to say this, but Adam quit high school, but then went back to finish it. But he quit high school to start his very first company and then eventually sold that one. So he was successful already in high school. But I do want to ask this one because it's pretty interesting. What was your greatest difficulty? And then we'll wrap it up there.
For JustFab or in?
I'm not quite sure, but I think what was your greatest difficulty, I guess, I think so, for JustFab, because this is one of your biggest, what was it, was there a time when you just wanted to quit? Because it's such a hard slog sometimes. So when was that moment when you just said, I need to give up, and then what was it that made you get back in?
So fortunately, Don and I, we always sort of joke, you always hear the too big to fail and talking about the big financial institutions. We just always joke and say we're just way too stubborn to fail. So there's probably been a couple times where we should have said, hey, we're giving up. It's too hard to raise the capital. We have almost no money left in the bank. Originally nobody would sell us shoes, right? It's hard to be a shoe company when you can't get anybody to sell you shoes. But we never actually thought about quitting. I do think the greatest difficulty that we had is that this is a capital-intensive business. So we actually design the product ourselves. So we're designing over 10,000 items. We do take inventory. We buy advertising to acquire customers. So it's very capital-intensive. And you know, when something like a Fab.com happens and blows up, it scares all the investors. So I think given how great the company is, I've been surprised at how difficult fundraising has been. So I think that's been the hardest challenge, right? Just getting the cash we need to build this company.
Wow, and just believing that you have a product that you want to get out there, and you have something of value and service. Just believing in that.
Yeah, it sort of sounds funny because now everyone talks about I want to be a unicorn and build $1 billion company, but that's sort of a relatively new term. So back in 2010, when we were talking about this and there was 5 of us, and you know, many of us had worked together, we said, look, we are going to build $1 billion company. And that was, and we actually started most of the meetings with, look, if it was easy to build $1 billion company, everybody would do it. So it's gonna be hard. It's supposed to be hard. And we sort of said, hey, we're gonna do it.
An IPO in 2015.
No. You know, so we are going to have to go. Well, we will go public at some point. We're certainly IPO ready. We're at the right stage. But I do believe it's easier to build enterprise value as a private company. You can be more aggressive. You can take more chances. There's not the public distractions. So part of the decision to do this round of financing with sort of a pre-IPO round was to stay private longer, where we think we can create more value.
Great. And it's better to be a unicorn than a dinosaur.
Definitely better to be a unicorn than a dinosaur.
Okay. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.